Welcome back to the channel. I'm well underway on my 1967 C10 build. Today, I'm gonna flip this cab over on its back, undercoat the bottom of the cab, put the body back on the frame, install some more goodies on the motor, and start installing our aftermarket AC kit. Now, if you haven't watched the first couple of videos, this is part 4. I'll link a card up above so you can go back, look at the playlist, and see what I have done to this truck so far. Now, this was the first time that I flipped a cab over on its back, and I could not do this on my own. I had to get some help from my wife, and she was able to assist me in rolling this cab on its back. It was a little sketchy setup, but it worked, and I would recommend, if you're gonna do this, definitely have a couple of people help you, because this is not an easy task.
Well, we did it. The GoPro died right when we got it flipped over, but damn, it's finally done. That was a pain in the ass, dude. I really don't know like what to suggest for somebody to do that, man. That was it's a lot more difficult than what I thought it was gonna be. Maybe, I don't know, get like 5 really strong friends so it's not such an ordeal.
I decided to pressure wash the underside of the cab to see what we were working with. I am gonna have a mobile blaster come to the house and sandblast the entire bottom of the cab, but I really just wanna see what this looks like. The underside of this cab is super clean with no major rot, so this is gonna clean up perfectly with a sandblaster. This is the first time I've seen a sandblaster in action up close. Look at the cab corners where he's blasting right now. The force is so powerful that it bent the cab corners down on the back of the cab. This is a really interesting process to watch up close, but I think for the next one, I'll take it to their facility.
Those guys did a killer job stripping the bottom of the cab from that undercoating and getting all the rust off of the metal. Now, while I will say this is a massive time saver, be prepared to clean up a huge mess. This stuff went everywhere. It went in all the nooks and crannies of the cab supports. It got in my mailbox. It got all over our vehicles. It got all over my neighbors' houses. So my neighbors probably hate me right now, but man, the amount of time that I saved by not having to sit here and grind all that stuff off, totally worth it in my opinion. So anyway, we're gonna hit this with an epoxy primer to get ready for our lizard skin.
Here are the products I'm gonna use on the bottom of this cab. This is a 2-part epoxy primer. In the 2 parts, it has a little canister within the can. You puncture this tab right here, and then it mixes the 2 parts together. It makes for a really solid base coat. Then we have our lizard skin sound control and ceramic insulation. This is a water-based product, so it's safe for home garage use, and it comes with a kit, and you get this spray gun, so you just need an air supply to apply the lizard skin. Once I was done cleaning up that huge mess from the sandblaster, I immediately went in the garage, got everything masked off, and got the bottom of this cab in primer. I did not want this to sit outside for too long. I was afraid that we were gonna get surface rust, so I just wanted to get it coated ASAP. Now I can apply the lizard skin sound control. This reminds me of a latex paint that you would get for your house. A really super thick latex paint, but it was really easy to work with. And once you got the spray gun set up and the spray pattern that you want, you just apply the sound control, and there's a gauge that comes with the kit so you can gauge how much material you're spraying on the surface. I applied 2 coats of the sound control, and it laid out really nice. I let it sit overnight, and it was time to start applying the insulation. Now, this reminded me a little more of roofing tar. Definitely not as sticky or thick, but just that consistency and look. And yes, I made a mess with that too. And for the application, the process is exactly the same. I may have changed the compressor settings a little bit since the material was a little different than the sound control, but regardless, it's still the exact same process. When it came time to sit the cab upright, I called in the big guns. Had my dad come over and help me with this part of it. Flipping it back upright was a little easier, but still felt just as sketchy. If you make one wrong move, you could drop this cab and seriously hurt yourself or potentially damage the cab. We're feeling a lot better now that the cab is upright. And now that the cab is upright, we can get rid of this sling and reinstall our Cab Lifter 3000, which is just a 4x4 sandwiched with some 2x8s, and we through bolt the whole setup to the cherry picker. Now we're able to put this through the cab and get ready to drop this back on the frame. It was a great feeling rolling this chassis back in the garage, knowing that we're getting ready to put the body on. Not only was I going to get a lot more room in my garage, but we get a first glimpse of what this truck is going to look like with that LS1 in the engine bay. Now that the cab is in place, we can hook up our Bed Lifter 3000, which is just a 4x4 screwed to some 2x4s that are screwed to the bed sides. And here we get a first glimpse of this truck put back together. And you know what? It looks almost exactly the same as it looked the day that I brought it home. I didn't have much time to enjoy the view of the C10. I had to jump right on replacing these motor mounts. So these are the Performance Online LS Swap motor mounts. And I decided to swap these out for the Hooker Blackheart Series LS motor mounts. I have the transmission cross member and decided to get the motor mounts to match. This combination pushed the motor back and set it down a little bit further in the frame rails, and it gave me the clearance that I needed between the front runner and the electric fans.
Very happy with the way that turned out. The Hooker Blackheart Series mounting setup is, in my eyes, probably just should be the go-to setup. I'm gonna grab my headers, I'm gonna throw them on and see if we can get them to fit.
I picked up a set of Speed Engineering long tube headers. These are stainless steel, and they fit pretty good. I had to clearance the frame just a little bit on the passenger side, but the driver's side went right in, and they look real nice in that engine bay. But I did end up doing an exhaust wrap on these headers. I wanted to keep the heat down in the engine bay as much as I could. So I did this exhaust wrap, and I think that it really does help with heat control. Plus, it looks really cool.
Since I had to remove our Holley high ram intake and put on this Valley lift plate to do the motor work, I thought it would be a shame to put that ugly stock Valley pan cover back on. So we actually got some knock sensor relocation brackets and a billet Valley pan cover from ICT. And along with that, we got a brand new stainless steel steam port kit that's gonna really clean up the look under our high ram intake.
This Valley plate cover came out super nice. This setup was a little pricey, but well worth the investment when you're building a motor that looks this good. Now I can throw the high ram intake back on and button up my motor work for now. Here's another look under the high ram intake. Man, that just looks super cool.
Today we're going to be installing the main components of this AC system, so this will more than likely be a two-part video. The truck's going to go to the shop in a couple weeks to do the body wiring and the exhaust, so we're going to have this ready to go for that shop. We're discussing potentially running the AC and heater lines through the fender to clean up the look of the engine bay, but we haven't made that decision just yet. If we decide not to do that, we will install our firewall plate and run the plumbing right through that. So now that we have a whole mess of parts, let's figure out where we're going to start the install.
After getting organized, I decided to start on installing the condenser first. It was the easiest thing to access right at the front of the truck, and it got me used to reading through the directions. Now, when you get any aftermarket AC kit, there's just going to be a ton of parts to go through, so it's best to get acquainted with what you have and then start on the easy stuff first, or at least that's what I found to work best for me.
Typically, the next step would be to install these hard lines through the radiator support. There's also a battery tray brace that would stabilize these lines, and then it's a straight shot to the firewall. However, since we're considering running the plumbing through the fender, we're going to hold off on this step for now.
Next, I began to work on the AC controls. Now, the AC kit that I got came with a conversion kit for your original control panel. Your original control panel doesn't have to be an AC control, it could be heat or AC. but it allows you to use your original control panel to work with the new AC system, which I thought was super cool. Since my truck is a non-AC cab truck, I had to cut the dash for the AC vents. Now talk about stressful. This dash was in amazing shape, so I did not want to screw this up. I measured 3 or 4 times before I made my first cut, and I'm glad I did because everything was spot on. The sides were a little easier to cut. You just had to center that template, and then you could use a hole saw for the hole, clean up the hole a little bit, painted the edges, and the AC vent fit in perfectly.
Cutting up that dash is probably the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life, man. I did not want to f that up. Vin and Jared did a great job making those templates. They're very easy to read. You just want to take your time and make sure you have those templates exactly where you want them, because once you cut, there's no going back. Now we're moving on to the actual evaporator, and at this point we would put on all of our hoses and run them through the firewall, but keep in mind I think we're going to route them a different way, so we're just going to test fit the evaporator because we need to figure out where we're going to put our ECU from our Terminator X Max system.
Now hit it with it.
We now have all the major components in place for Chris over at C&K Metal to finalize the install. Keep an eye out for part 2 where we show you how Chris ends up routing the plumbing and connecting the unit. If you guys have any questions about this install or if you have any questions about this build, drop a comment below. We'll get back with you as soon as possible. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. If you have done so, thank you so much for your support. That's going to do it for this video. We'll see you in the next one.